Do you take him out to subcontinent conditions and give him that opportunity? Or do the selectors even know that there is a player like in this caliber that we should be reaching out to see, have that conversation? It's just a phone call.
Welcome back to Sri Lankan Cricket Podcast. Happy New Year to you, everybody who's listening. Not a very good New Year for Sri Lanka team. We suffered a humiliating loss to India in the one-day series yesterday, and we lost the T20 series as well. We had a bit of time away from the podcast the last few weeks, Bora. Happy New Year, and how have you been?
Yeah, Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to everyone listening. It was a good break. Had away from cricket as well. Visiting family in Sri Lanka, but now back into the grind of things. Getting back into the cricket, Sri Lanka, since the turn of the new year, hasn't had the best results. Heading into a tough series, but got to remember we got a ODI World Cup happening in India, and it's good that we kind of know where Sri Lanka cricket is currently with how they want to go into the World Cup. I think it's a big eye-opener at this stage. Something that we hope to look to cover through this episode with her.
Yeah. I was watching the game last night, and it kept reminding me of that Asia, I think it was a Coca-Cola Championship final in 2000 where we beat India. I think it was Sana Jayasuriya's birthday, and he scored 183, and we got close to 300 runs or something, and we got India out to 54. And I don't know, for some reason, I kept reminding, my mind went back to that game in Sahaja. It was a disappointing series. Nothing worked for us. Our batsmen didn't score enough runs except for Dasun Shanaka. On the other hand, Virat Kohli is back in form, 200s within 3 days. Yeah. We talked about, in the past episodes, we talked about it's just a matter of time for someone like Virat Kohli to come back into form. And unlucky for us, it was against us, Bora, but lot to think about this series. Where should we start? I don't know where to start. Apart from, I don't know, I think we were okay in the field. Other than that, everything went wrong for us.
Yeah, not a lot went right. Let's put it that way. In terms of whichever way you go, those not the good results. It also, at certain points, you just it was a comical sight as well with some of the things we are doing. But good players know to cash in, and guys like Virat Kohli, we know the quality of them, and they know what are the tours ahead. He would have been, eyeing at least a few hundreds. He got what he wanted, but coming into this series, he would have, we wouldn't have put it down on paper saying I'm going to get a few hundreds here. So showed the quality of his knock. I wasn't surprised with the high scores India was putting in. I just didn't feel we were ready as a bowling unit. And we saw the results. Before this series kicked off, there was a bit of, news about team setups, how to go about it, what's happening. After a tour like this, we might see a few changes happening. Heading into a World Cup, probably names would change. But you've got to also think about what's the noise you're hearing out in Sri Lanka. Like, you've got certain different voices coming in. We've got a sports minister who's got his opinion and how he wants to go about cricket. You've got the cricket board who's got ways on how they operate, and then former players coming in with a few bit of insight. So couple that with a poor series, something's going to give. So that's something which we'll see happening in the coming week or so. I think the cricket boards put out a media release that they'd like to know what happened
already.
The famous report that we keep hearing, and then there'll be a lot of washing laundry in the public forum. That's what's going to happen.
It has become formality now. After a bad series, they come out with these I don't know what you call them, disciplinary hearings or asking for explanations. But I think it's a good time for us. I mean, you mentioned about changes in the team. We put out a tweet asking a Twitter poll asking our listeners what should we do, and interesting results have come up. We gave 3 options saying do nothing, or sack Dasun Chanaka, or bring back Angie, Chandi, and Kusal Janit. And 63% of you has said do nothing. So I don't know. I'm with the majority here, Bora. 31% has said bring back Angie, Chandi, and KJP into the team, and only 6% has said sack Dasun Chanaka. So that's what our listeners think.
That's what we're hearing out on Twitter at the moment. So I get where people go in terms of names. The easiest one is who are the former players who are still playing or who are not in the setup. And then when you read their names, they sound good on paper because we all, in our mind goes back to the times what we have in our thoughts is how good they were performing, the peak performance they've been putting in. What I think you got to think about is also a reality of how long have they played, how much they've aged, where would the skill sets match, and that's something. If you have it your way, you put the players back in, and you might find out for real if they've got the numbers or if they perform well. So that's a bit of an unknown because the 3 of them haven't. They've been in and out. Angelo Matthews, I think, has a steady record, but others has been hot and cold. So it depends whether they'll go. Probably one of out of them would come back in. We've got the top order pretty steady, so I think it's the middle order. I know there's been a bit of hiccups, but this is Avishka's first series back fully from being injured, so you got to allow a bit of time for a player like that. Kusal Mendes, let's put it this way, he needs to bring up a good score against a good team. Because that's been his shortcomings. So
he gets starts, he just doesn't kick on and go and make a big like he did when he started his career.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the bowlers, India is a tough team. They're pretty good, and they've been hurting with a few of their performance not going their way. So they needed to win this series pretty big and pretty, very convincingly, which didn't put Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka pretty much found it on the receiving end. That's the way I see it. From what do we need to regroup and get in so we head the right way. Like we've got some good performance in the past that we can bank on, so you kind of got to trust that process that has been working and keep trying, regroup and go ahead. What could we have done better in the last year or so? Still, I think we discussed this in a few of our programs, is we should have kept a stronger hold on fitness, how they were monitoring the players. If I'm being critical, that's something where I think Chris Silver would let go of it soon as he took over his role, where he kept the ownership on or being the players being accountable for their fitness levels. I think it doesn't work within our setup.
No, they take it for granted, it's not a secret. I don't know, maybe it's in our culture. We look for shortcuts, and when you see a little bit of opportunity to put your head in, they try to put their whole body in there. So we should not, the standards should be standards. We should not That's a big mistake we did. You're right there.
And then what happens is that rolls on with certain other elements dropping off as well, because players have control, and then there is a bit of a drop in everything around that. That's something I'm being not could say it, being critical of it. That's where I think we could have been a bit more smart on how we go about it, because that's one area where the players were held accountable and they had to push hard to get that results, because we weren't on top of our marks there, I feel.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, we have not won a bilateral series in India. That's with all these
Great.
dominating teams we had in late 90s and throughout the 2000s. Even like till the early part of 2010s as well. So I'm not saying we should have won the series. At least we should have won a game in that one-day series. It's just that, like, when you're playing in India, you'll have to play their game. I think like we played our brand of cricket there, and I don't think it works there, because Wanidu doesn't get any turn on those pitches, and they'll see him through in the 10 overs. So, and like, even success we had in the past, that's mainly because of our bowling, not because of our batting. And that has been Dusmantha Chamira, Wanidu Hasaranga, and Deekshana.
Tough gig. You're right. Now, I guess shows the quality of cricket. We know how strong India is. That's pretty easy answer. The way they've taken the game ahead to where things are at. We've exposed ourselves this early in the calendar year. Now it's okay. How do we change up? I mean, if you take the ODI series, at least we can say we were fighting till the third one and then lost it. But going into the ODI series, you could see there was a big gap between the two teams, and those guys just put it on. So what can we do better? I guess we've just got to adapt a lot better. Work with the players. Like there are players who are going to be questioned now. I guess a positive from this group could be Kasun Rajitha with his performances. I felt he did well with the ball.
He dropped catches off his bowling.
Yeah, and then, apart from
and even Nuinidu Fernandubara.
Yeah,
he looked very good. He looked very comfortable against fast bowling, and he was timing the ball really well. He looked big. I mean, when you look at him, I felt like looking at the Indian batsman batting on those pitches, because he was, he was timing them nicely. One disappointment for me is Srilanka and even Avishka. I know it's his comeback series, but he had 3 games to play, and I think he was trying a bit too hard to get back into it. So I don't know. It's this is we are going back to the same things we talked about in the past year. This is where we need these players who had played these situations in international cricket. The all players. They should be with them. So, like, some of them, I know they're not available to coach Sri Lanka, but the players, even someone like Malinga, I don't think he's doing any coaching gigs at the moment. He should have been ideal bowling coach for this tour.
Yeah, resources, we got to be smart in how we're going to rope it in and go about it. But that's something. I mean, the positives, if you talk about positives, this group of players, I think I think can't remember who played in India last time out there. I don't think many of them went there.
Yeah.
So first time series for them. Understand one is probably because of his IPL exposure could have helped a bit with the group. Everyone else I think was really new, raw. Um, and what you can hope is they learn on themselves and be able to handle these situations better, because um, it's more an experiential learning situation they've gotten in. It's harsh, but um, the good players will be able to understand and learn on their own. The others will need specialized coaching to direct them to say this is a technical skill you need to change and get up to speed. But you'd expect players of a certain maturity level to learn to handle that situation better. Ideally, an outcome would have been they would have learned by the third game and be able to adapt that. But to give them that bit of time now to come back. Expectations wise, if we go back into, all right, I mean, social media is a lot on Angelo Matthews. Again, I'm a great fan of Matthews coming in. We've always spoke that he ideally should be in that number 5 spot, but differences in selection, fitness didn't allow for that. But I think it's making a strong comeback now. Generally, in Sri Lanka, with the amount of social media awareness that gets created, players do find themselves back into the mix of things. That's just how Sri Lanka works. The selectors tend to feel the brunt of it in the media. I mean, the best example we see is the cricket board wanting to know, putting out reports in social media. So there seem to be, there's justification for every move they do, or at least in the media, that it's seen that way. So I won't be surprised with some of the changes. We just got to be mindful. The top order changes we do, it doesn't affect us in the short term, and then we are struggling for another 3 years to find that replacement to go on from there. And that I feel if we do a massive change in the top order might affect us going back. Because like Nuanidu is a good example, right? He's been your top order bat that we've introduced, but now if we go back into a top order player, that pushes the Nuanidus out of the setup, while the guys who haven't been performed stays in the squad. So then, okay, what do we talk about development there? Those are scenarios we've got to consider. From a coaching point of view, there's been a good turnaround for Silverwood, but he's probably feeling the heat now a lot more, because you notice some of the more directions he wanted to go in the last 3 months hasn't worked out the way we wanted it to. So you start then questioning, okay, what's happening here? Why? And then he also has a bit of doubts on how he wants to go about it. You notice we in Bangladesh, when you want to test match, we played with fast bowlers and it worked out. Now some of the changes we are going with is backfiring and we're losing.
Rajith he was not even in the original one day setup, so he's just a replacement who has done well for us. I mean, he doesn't get his variations right. That's because for me, he's not a one-day bowler, but he bowls well with that new ball, and what he lacks is bowling with the old ball in the depth. But if you're playing in that level, that's why I mentioned Malinga. That's where you need someone like him in that setup who has the experience to talk to these guys, how to bowl those. I mean, he bowls off cutter. It doesn't work for right-handers, especially on those pitches. It's just like you're asking to be hit. You need at least 2 or 3 slow ball options if you're playing in an international team. Otherwise, you get picked up. Little things like that. I mean, that last 10 overs cost us more than 100 runs in the last ODI, Bora. So you can't let that happen game after game. So we'll have to fix this because we are going to play the World Cup in India. And you're right, we don't want to do too many changes as well. So one thing, I remember 2011 when we were preparing for the World Cup, the selection committee, they said that players who get picked at least should have played at least 50, close to 51 day games, because they wanted to go with the same group of players into that World Cup. So I mean, we need to think like that, like think about World Cup, like World Cup cycles, like Olympic cycles, and we've been really lucky with trying to solve the big problems with short-term solutions, and we were lucky because we had enough good players who can produce individual brilliance to win games for us. But it's not happen. It doesn't happen anymore. So we'll have to think, take it serious, and otherwise, we are so far behind at the moment, and it'll be really hard for us to catch up.
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of soul searching going on, a lot of questions to be answered, and see what happens.
Yeah. We don't like to be negative about things, but these things, sometimes you have to talk about these things. Otherwise, like you're looking for solutions, right? If you don't look for solutions, you're not gonna get any. So, I think I'll stop now. uh, shall we answer one question about India series? I think it's a good place to ask this one. This is from Sanjeev. What combination are we exactly looking for in the World Cup, and the weaknesses we need to address before heading there? Because we talked about World Cup in India, I think it's a good time to answer this one. We'll do a quick one, Bora.
Combinations, you're probably looking at one, you do your all-rounder and 4 bowlers. And then another part-time option for the backup. So the top was at 4, 5, and 6 batters with the keeper. So 6 batters with a keeper playing in India has to score runs. We can't expect a longer everyone contribute and get it. It's top 4 has to score bulk of the runs. If you look at how India scored, top 3 pretty much scores 100, and the bits and pieces gets them to 360 plus. So if you want to go that blueprint, we've got to do that. Have our batsmen delivered on that? Probably not. And then you go, okay, who's our batters you want to fill that position with? Yeah, have we got the batting sorted to fill that spot in the top 5? That's, I think, a big question mark. Who do we go with? That's where Kusal Janits, Chandimals to and the current players of Nuanidus. Dickwell probably comes back into the equation. Top order bat, wicket keeper, has a good enough one-day record. And then decide. I mean, we need players now to score some runs, not be good on paper for your 20s, 30s. Top order bats got to have those hundreds against your name. If not, you're expecting a lot from a bowling group in conditions that are made for good scores.
Yeah, I think our problem is our batting group, Bora. Our bowling group is pretty much picks itself, isn't it? I mean, if we have everyone fit, let's say Dushmanta is fit, Dilshan Madhushanka is fit, and Amika and Lahiru Kumara, Kasun Raj is the Manindu Pandase and Mahesh Deekshana. So that's your seven bowlers in the squad, isn't it? 7-8 bowlers and Charmik.
Yeah.
I don't think they will make a change with Charmik at this moment because he's doing a job he doesn't have to if we have someone like Dushmantha Chamir in that team, Bora. Like he bowling, like he can bowl a couple of overs in the depth, but not 4 overs on the trot because it's you get picked because he doesn't have enough pace to beat the bat with a fast Yorker. So even with a small mistake, it's you get punished. So with Madhushanka and Dushmantha fit, I think we have a better bowling attack. So we have to fix the batting. You're right. We might have to bring in Angelo in there. I don't think Kuzal Janit, unless he has shown brilliant form somewhere playing cricket, I don't think he can break into this team now. So it's either Chandi or Angelo Matthews who had a chance to come and play in that middle order.
Yeah, you're right. That's where, I mean, those set of players will be circulating, and I think we go into a bit of a washing machine scenario where the players get chucked into a washing machine, and then you pick up who comes in,
Srilanka.
and then the theory comes around the washing machine of where they can play conditions at a certain, they're the best in that condition. So but with the current way, you got a lot of luck have to go away in the World Cup. India hopefully not in the same group as us. I'm not sure have they've done the groupings yet, but you hope that we are not in that same group. And then go from there, because since of late the results haven't been the best, and I mean, you and I've been lucky. We were born in a time where you could watch, and your memories are of some good results of how Sri Lanka were on top of India. But I think that the time has the last 10 years hasn't been that rosy for some of the younger people watching cricket and going through.
Tough. Really tough.
Good question. I think now things rolling over is what happens to the mixture of our group. I think our group of players, you're right, Charmika is struggling because he's been put into a spot where we could also get away by putting him in the middle and make his role a bit more safer. But then again, you also want to give that opportunity to someone to see if, okay, have we got someone lined up to be a potential backup. So that'll be something they'll look out. I think Kasun Rajit has probably become a frontline bowler at the moment. Dushmantha Chamira coming in helps out that group. They need to come back, otherwise we are struggling. This is the same effect we had in T20 where those players were key players. Without them, it was a hard grasp, and that's a sign of teams where teams like us, where like Bangladesh has that effect where it's between that big five or big four of Tamim Iqbal, Shakib, Mushfiq Rahim, and then one of the bowlers having to deliver. Sri Lanka is in that same mixture of team combinations.
What happened when they come in, Bora? They take wickets with the new ball. If they take a couple of wickets with the new ball, then one comes in, Vandese comes in. They're coming in to attack, to take a wicket. You can have a slip there. At the moment, they're trying to contain. And so the key to win in India is the middle overs, where someone like Chahal or Kuldeep Yadav who comes and turn the ball, and take wickets in those middle overs. We don't have someone like that. Only guy, I mean, Vanidhu doesn't turn the ball. Only guy who can turn it is Van der Sar. And I mean, if you can't ask him to do a containing role, so to do that, we have to take wickets with the new ball and put the pressure back to the batting team. So yeah, it's
Well, we got a leggy who's playing in the Big Bash in Australia. That's a good way to talk about him. He's getting recognized here. Could he be the answer? Tim David came into the Australian setup from playing overseas. Are you open or willing to open that door and have that conversation with a player who's been in a circuit, getting exposed here, and has the quality from what we've seen in the Big Bash as a leg spinner? Do you take him out to subcontinent conditions and give him that opportunity? Or do the selectors even know that there is a player like in this caliber that we should be reaching out to have that conversation? It's just a phone call, look, we are interested in you. Would you be, open for an opportunity to represent Sri Lanka? You're playing like this. There's no question of skill set or which level of cricket he's playing. You definitely pick the Big Bash performance over a domestic performance, which we are playing at the moment, and a lot of people questioning that. So it lies whether do we want to go down that avenue.
There's no question about the quality of cricket he's playing at the moment. He's he's representing Victoria, and he's playing for Renegades. So Ruanta Kallepotha is a very good option, and it'll keep Vanidhu and Matisha on their toes as well.
Correct.
It's a very good option. I don't see why we don't explore that option as well, because he's been doing well for the last couple of years. He's been in the spotlight, and every opportunity he got, he's done well. He worked really hard to get to where he is now here. Like, it's not easy for an Asian player to get recognized and get picked to a Big Bash team, let alone representing the state. So he's at his top of his game.
Top of his game, mature, understands well. I mean, Melbourne Renegades went after him, even though he classifies as overseas player. So they opened up an overseas spot for him, knowing the quality that is being put in domestic cricket. So he fits everything it is. But also don't want to pull him back on his good journey. I'm just thinking of a Sri Lankan, okay, we are struggling, who we're looking for players. Like, they're talking about players who we've seen. Here's another guy whose potential to, make that change for us. So
before they grab him and play him in the Australia team, I think we should put our best foot forward and get him, and get him a cap for Sri Lanka. Then at least we got there first. Because remember what happened to Fawad Ahmed? Yeah, they was like last minute decision to get him the citizenship and get him to play for Australia. So
correct.
He might end up in that plane to India with the Australia one-day team.
You never know that. Speaking of cricket, Australia, they've been the news. I mean, we touch base on Sri Lanka cricket for a bit now. With heading into Cricket Australia, they've made a big decision on not wanting to tour Afghanistan. They've given their reasons why they don't want to, saying deterioration of basic human rights for women in Afghanistan, and they don't want to tour there. It's, how do I say, would have been great for them to tour out there. It was a huge success when they toured Pakistan a few years ago. So went to Sri Lanka when we were in struggle with the financial turmoil that was happening. Luckily, they didn't pull out of that tour, went ahead, traveled out there, Cricket would have done, Australian team traveling out to Afghanistan would have done a lot of, they have a lot of benefits for the country watching that game. I understand there are a lot of security concerns, but teams like Australia, when they tour out, there's a lot of exposure they give for the traveling countries, and it helps the tourism, brings revenue, and overall helps the economy. So it's a big loss for Afghanistan that Australia not coming out there. Bit of backlash with the players reacting as well. Some of the key Afghan players, Rashid Khan make a statement questioning, if it's so uncomfortable traveling out to Afghanistan, should I be playing in the Big Bash? So,
well,
so
I don't.
Not sure how they'll handle that situation.
It's Afghanistan's loss, Bora. I mean, when you look at it, it's basic human rights, and you're talking about 50% of the population, and you're not allowing women doctors to practice, and it's not politics. It's just basic human rights. That's what Chief Executive Nick Hockley has said. So politics should not interfere with sport, but this is a different matter in my opinion, Bora. So one question though, will they play against Afghanistan in the World Cup in India? Will they boycott that game?
I don't know. They've boycotted once in the '96 World Cup when they didn't travel out to Sri Lanka. So I won't be surprised if they don't play the game as well. So they make announcements pretty early, unless the ICC very conveniently fixtures them on both sides of the group, so then they don't face that situation. So you never know that. So,
what if Afghanistan make it to semi-finals?
Yeah, that's another question. Good question. Then they'll put it on the board to make that decision. So
ICC to make the decision.
Yeah, they'll play that for sure.
I think that's all the time we have for today, Bora. It's been a long episode.
I know.
Now that we are back into it, I think we should try and record an episode every week and get back into it. Other than that, we don't have a sponsor yet. So if you can find us a sponsor, if you're willing to sponsor the podcast, please come aboard. Please send us your comments and questions to srilankancricketpodcast@gmail.com. Give us a follow on social media, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.
All right. Bye-bye.